We our brains are kind of designed to look for safety. Like that's a very primitive, very normal thing that we want absolutes and we want things to be as we would like them to be. And when things don't turn out how we would like them to be, or people don't behave in a way that we have decided they should, or we project a different idea on to people or situations that maybe isn't accurate and we find ourselves disappointed, we know that we have had some attachments.
Welcome to Conversation for the Soul. I'm Linda Christine, and I am here today with a dear friend of mine who is always an amazing conversationalist. And we're going to talk today about what, my dear April Novoa? What are we talking about?
Detachment. Oh, thank you for
Yeah,
having me. I so appreciate you. I appreciate you holding space for me and just allowing me to go on and sort out my thoughts and but I feel like this is an important topic right now, probably more than ever. I think it's always an important topic. Um, you know, human beings, if we feel in control, we kind of think that that is safety, you know? Like if we can control a situation, a person, a variable, an outcome, that somehow we are safe. And so, and we confuse attachment for love, and it's not the same thing. So I think a lot of times because our brains are kind of designed to look for safety. Like that's a very primitive, very normal thing that we want absolutes and we want things to be as we would like them to be. And when things don't turn out how we would like them to be, or people don't behave in a way that we have decided they should, or we project a different idea on to people or situations that maybe isn't accurate and we find ourselves disappointed, we know that we have had some attachments. And the Buddha says that attachment is suffering, and no truer words. And I think a lot of the ascended masters and spiritual teachers have always said this, but having it here and then living it here are two different things. And I think that's what we need to talk about today, because we've gone through a lot as a country and in our families and in our relationships. And we had some were very happy and elated, and others are suffering. They're experiencing suffering because they had an attachment to a different outcome. Um, So
yeah,
yeah, that's where I want to go today, because I feel like we don't need to suffer like that. We don't, but we need to learn what what is love? What is attachment? What is detachment? What does that mean?
absolutely. And this whole podcast came about because April and I were talking this week about issues with our kids. And oh my gosh, I like to think of myself as being able to detach. I don't know if I'm kidding myself or what, but when it comes to those closest to me, my children or my spouse,
It's hard.
wow, that's when it's like super hard, super hard.
Yes. Yes. I mean, if it's getting to the point where it keeps you up at night and you have anxiety about it and you can't function normally, um, and you can just feel it in your body. You can feel that tension of like, it is not okay. It is not okay that they're not okay. And, but you don't really have that kind of control. RG Spina came across my radar this last week, and I sent you that podcast, and I literally had to listen to it like 3 times. And one of the things that he said is that caring is not the same as compassion. He said caring involves an agenda, whereas compassion hold space no matter what.
Mm, that's powerful.
And I think our culture has taught us that to cling to attach to is loving, but when it comes with an agenda, like I want this, your life to be this way. I want this situation to go away or resolve for you, and I'm going to be in pain and suffering until that happens. I mean, what a horrible place to be. And the reality is like you can't be fully there for somebody if you're suffering. Like it's kind of like if, if I went to the hospital with a broken leg and the doctor had one too. It's like, yeah, he's going to feel what I'm feeling, but he can't really help me from his position. So when we see another person suffering or going through a hard time or maybe not making the best decisions, we think we're being caring. We are being caring, but we're not being compassionate, because to be compassionate is to not care. And that sounds like really, I know that's very hard to swallow, but you cannot fully love somebody and care about the outcome or have control over what goes on. You have to surrender that. That's like super hard. And I think it's our programming and our conditioning around this, like that we have to somehow, we can't be happy if our agenda is not accomplished in the lives of other people or in our nation or, you know, in a situation. And that means you're going to spend most of your time unhappy, because if you attach to every situation and every outcome in other people's lives and you don't have any control over that, and how much is that going to run amok?
Yeah, yeah. And there's people now who are making all these pledges or leaving the country or wanting to shave their heads or wanting to do whatever to show how upset they are, which is kind of heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
To be that invested in something. On one hand, I'm kind of like, well, that's great. You're really passionate about it, but like you said, caring versus compassion. I would much rather see people be compassionate as I am compassionate towards everyone who feels that way. I want to take the 50,000-foot view. I don't want to link myself with that emotion. I want to sit in neutrality and witness it and move it through.
Right. Yeah. You know, we create most all of our suffering.
100%.
And we don't want to accept that. We want to always like blame it on something external to us. If this situation goes how I expect or I'd like it to, then I will be happy. If it doesn't, I will be unhappy. But that's like a recipe for just constant waviness throughout your life, like constant emotional chaos. Because I look in nature, and we were talking about this morning, and I look out at the trees. And if I had an expectation or an attachment to the idea that trees should all be straight, I've got an entire forest behind me of trees that are not straight. Some of them are windy, some of them are leaning, some of them have almost completely fallen over. They're moving in all sorts of directions. But if my happiness is based on an idea, an expectation, a goal that is unreasonable, and most of our goals are kind of unreasonable where it comes to things external to ourselves, right? So if that's my expectation, I'm going to suffer from from the attachment to that expectation. The other thing he said that really hit home is he said detachment is enlightenment.
Mm. Yeah, because
And
you're really stepping away from it and just allowing.
just allowing, loving what is before you, just being completely at peace with what is before you, regardless of what comes or what goes, being accepting, not just accepting, allowing, because accepting also has this like dissatisfaction attached to it, right? Like I'm accepting this, but down deep, I'm really, disappointed, right? But I'll accept it. Allowing is like, look, the this is what the universe served up, and I'm going to trust there's a reason for it. Maybe I don't understand it, but this is the dish I've been given, and I'm going to allow it to be what it is.
How do
And
we
it's
do that with those closest to us, though? How do we do that with our children, especially because they are, I mean, we've been caregivers for so many years, and then they leave the nest and we have to let them fly, but we still kind of embody that caring role and haven't gone on to the compassionate role.
right. So we have to take the temperature of the relationship. So this is what I heard from Laura Matsu. I've been all these wonderful people. I can't take credit for.
Wow, you got to send me links so I can share with everybody that's listening to
Well,
this.
I will. This was very good. She said, if you're going to have a conversation with someone, say you want to help them to change their perspective or to feel better, there's two elements you have to have that conversation. Number one, you have to have respect. Do you respect them? And do they respect you? Number two, you have to have curiosity. Are you curious about why they think and believe the way that they think? Or are you closed to what they believe and think? Are they curious about what you believe and think? Do they want to understand, or are they closed to that? If the answer to those two questions is yes and yes, there is respect and there is curiosity, you have a fertile ground for a very good dialogue. But if the answer to that question is no and yes, or yes and no, or no and no, then it's better to uh, wait and maybe not discuss that thing. Um, because we have to approach each other with those two elements. First and foremost, respect. I honor you regardless of whether I agree with you, regardless of whether I think what you think is kind of off the chain, whatever my perception is, I respect you, even if your perception is not my own. And then number two, I really do want to understand where you're coming from. I may or may not agree. Heck, I might learn something and maybe I will agree with what you're saying. But I really don't approach it with an agenda to agree or disagree. I just am holding space and I want to hear you and understand, where you're coming from, because our frame of reference and our perceptions are wildly different. Our experiences are different. You and I are, I think, from Generation X, and we have a whole other background that is very difficult to explain, say, to Generation Z or the millennials or even the boomers. And so we have that in common. And so we can talk about that and we can connect on that information. But even within that, there's probably some perspectives that we hold that differ from one another. And can we approach that respectfully and with curiosity? If we can have a very productive conversation. It's fertile. The ground is fertile for that kind of conversation. But if that's lacking in some way, and I don't say this from judgment, maybe someone is just not capable of it at this point in time, then that maybe that conversation needs to wait or be put on the back burner, or perhaps it just needs to be surrendered, and allow that person to approach you when they're ready. But we need to, in our country, learn again how to have dialogue with one another. And that's sorely missing. There has been so much of an effort to keep us polarized and separated, and the pot's continually stirred for, I think, ratings, where the media is concerned, and where the government has been stirring it. I've always said that if we all got along, they'd be completely redundant. there would be nothing for them to do. We would figure things out in the private sector because we do most of it anyway, right? But there is an interest in keeping people stirred up against one another. So we've had these two outside forces, mind control, manipulation thing going on. Even advertisers do this. They know this, right? Like they have to like convince you that you absolutely need this thing, and so they have to communicate to you that you are lacking in some way, and so they will be needed. So we have these powerful forces, and they reach us like they never have before through mediums like social media and the all over the internet and television. We when you and I were kids, the news came on at 5, and that's pretty much all. And I slept through part of it or played through part of it, don't even remember it. My parents were captivated for that hour, listening to it. But, it was just really not a big part of our lives. And now we've got it 24/7. And I'm not sure the human mind is really capable of handling that constant exposure. So, that begs to ask another question. And that question is, are we are we informed or are we influenced?
Mm.
And I think that really, when you understand the delicacy of the human mind, you would agree that we are very influenced. And so, how much of what we think we know and believe is actually true, or is it something that you heard? Is it verifiable? Who has the time really to go down rabbit holes and find out whether something is true? We trust these sources to give us correct information, but there's other agendas in giving that information, and so we have to be very cautious about what we decide we're going to buy, hook, line, and sinker. And we have to kind of sit with things instead of readily jumping on the emotional bandwagon and, letting things get away from us. But back to, again, that's a part of detachment, because if you attach to a particular narrative, a particular story, a particular outcome, and then it doesn't turn out how you'd like, that can cause really great mental stress. And I have great compassion for people that are really going through that. I really do. But the other thing he said, and this might come off a bit shocking, I really recommend you check out his work, because when you listen to it in context, it makes a lot of sense. He said to instantly become present, okay, enlightened in the moment, able to think objectively, you need to learn these two phrases: I don't know, and I don't care.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going back, caring is not about love. Involves investment. Okay. If I care about you, I have an investment to how things go for you. And if things don't go well for you, Linda, I'm going to be sad, and we're both going to be sad, and I'm not going to be able to help you. But if I have compassion for you, then I'm not invested in the outcome, so I can support you when things do not go how you would like them to go. And I think we have a very big misunderstanding about that. And I'm jumping all over the place, but I feel like that's an important point.
No, it's all threaded together. It makes complete sense to me. Something that I'm curious about your thoughts on, at what point is the detachment, if it's just not going in the right direction, at what point can you detach and just turn your back and walk away? Or are you, in a sense, spiritual bypassing? How much work do you have to invest in
Mhm.
getting to a compassionate outcome versus just saying enough's enough and turning your back and walking away?
Well, if it's really not, it's not about, so if we're talking about a relationship, like, okay,
Yeah.
spiritual bypassing is not being capable of owning your own. it's like ignoring the shadow elements that you have within yourself in order to, I'm going to be positive and pretend like this isn't there. It's like keeping your head in the sand about yourself. It's not the same when it comes to another person. I mean, you can look and say, okay, that's true. They have done this, they have said this, and this is where they're at. Okay. And you can allow that to be as it is without denying its existence. Now, when you're spiritually bypassing, you're denying the reality. You're denying your own reality and you're denying the reality of the other. But when you're working with detachment, you fully allow the reality, yours and theirs. Like you fully allow it to be as it is without attaching to an outcome. Now, if we're talking about boundaries, you do have to be careful about how much you're going to catch yourself. If you're busting over your own boundaries, you're going to feel that anxiety of attachment again.
Yeah.
Because a lack of boundary is attachment. That's what codependency is. Codependency is, if I think of and I'm talking about myself because I was a codependent for a long, long time. And I would call myself a recovering codependent because I do have the tendency to go back into those behaviors. But a codependent is invested heavily in outcomes in regards to relationships. They're not detached. And so because they're not detached, they're suffering. They're in pain.
Hmm. Yeah, I
They're
should have said boundaries, not bypassing, but yes,
but
you
is it,
explained
you're
it so
accurate.
perfect.
You're accurate there because codependents spiritually bypass. They don't want to deal with the reality of what is. So they pretend that everything, I grew up with an addict. We spiritually bypassed in
Mhm.
order to not deal with the pain that caused. And so, the night before things were thrown and tempers, got out of hand and it was really scary. And then the next day it was, would you like syrup with your pancakes?
Hmm. Yeah.
Glass of orange juice? Come on, sit down. I'll make you some pancakes, right? So that is how codependents are born. It's, let's pretend that this didn't happen. But when you're balanced and when you're working, and of course, it's very difficult for a child to detach. We're not talking about, you know, children like, you know, I'm not attached to your behavior. Like that's ridiculous, right? Because children are, until they become adults. But in a situation where someone is behaving badly and you're pretending as if they're not, is not detachment, that's codependence.
Wasn't that most of our families growing up? I feel like that's one
Absolutely.
of the definitions of Gen X is we raised ourselves, our parents ignored everything, pretended like things didn't happen.
Yeah, that was the modus operandum. That's what they grew up with. So that's what
Yeah.
they did with us. And, and I often think, there's a stunting of maturity with, that particular generation because of the way that they were raised, and they just did not have the capability to deal with the complexities of life that children do bring. And so the easiest thing to do was just to kind of pretend it didn't happen or ignore it or tell them to go outside and come back when it's dark, whatever they had to do to be able to cope because, it's complex, like child parent relationships, spousal relationships, very complex. So if you don't have the bandwidth to do it because you weren't raised with an example of how to do that, you dip into that codependent abuser, codependent kind of thing. And it was normalized for us. It was very normal for us. And of course, a lot of us tried to do the exact opposite. And I think we helicopter parented and probably overindulged and didn't let them maybe experience some hard things that we had experienced. And that was also detrimental. So there is no easy answer to like how to do that right. I mean, It's really easy for people that have not had children to judge those that that do. But when you're in the battlefield, like children are I think, one of your greatest teachers. I mean, I feel like they have each one of them have taught me something very invaluable about myself that I didn't see. They bring that stuff up, and it's a really good thing. Is it meant to be perfect? No, I don't think so. I think we need um, a certain amount of contrast to learn and grow and evolve as human beings. And without it, we wouldn't. We would be like a tree that had some kind of a cage around it, and was just forced to grow straight. And when I look at the forest, I really don't want to see straight trees. I really want to see trees with all the nuance and the beauty. And that comes through the things that we go through. So,
What do you think makes, I mean, what have you witnessed in somebody that is really strong in being able to carry compassion over the caring?
when I've stumbled upon these folks, um, they're able to give from from an endless space. They have like infinite amount of love to give because they're not tapping into their own uh inner, strength. They're not like they're tapping into something that's higher and something that's endless. So it's almost like it's a conduit through them. And I think the way they do it is they don't care. And I don't mean that in like, please, everybody out there, try to change your mind about that word, because that word has an agenda attached to it.
Yes, it does, big time.
It really does. They
Somebody
don't.
says I don't care to me, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I'm done with you.
Right, right. So we have been culturally trained to think that we're supposed to care about everything and everybody, but that is not actually loving them, because you have an agenda attached to that. You have some sort of an outcome you want to see. You want it to behave and act and say and be shaped in the way you would like it to, your idea about it. And that is not, love is freedom. Love is, you can be and do and behave however you want, so long as you don't hurt me or someone else. And I'm going to allow, not accept, because accept is like, this is wrong, right? I'm going to allow you to be and do and whatever. You get to think what you want to think. You get to believe what you want to believe. You can do that. I may not share your perspective, but I will have compassion for you. I will hold space for you. I will allow you to be who you perceive you are.
And I
Okay.
will speak up if you cross my boundaries.
That's right, because that's me teaching you how to love me.
Hmm. Yeah.
So if, I'm fine with you doing whatever it is you want to do, just, do no harm. That's like my only like rule. Like in my relationships is just don't do any harm. Okay. And if you're doing that, like, I don't care. Okay. I don't care. I don't care. And I don't know. I don't know if your way is the right way or the wrong way. I just know how I know what my movie's like, but I don't know what your movie is. Your movie might have a whole different flavor to it. I don't know. I don't know. But if, one of Ra Uru, who was the founder of human design, said, if you love someone for who they are, oh no, if you allow someone to be who they are, and they allow you to be who you are, that is love. Anything else is madness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I just go back to that quote all the time, because I can see my sneaky little agendas trying to work their way into all kinds of situations. I'm like, oh, I see you. You're trying to control how this person, shows up for you, you know, and it's not your business. and it's not loving, April.
Yeah, that is hard, especially if you've lived the majority of your life, two-thirds of your life, maybe three-quarters of your life, as a person who tried to control your life
Mhm.
out of whatever, fight or flight, or out of necessity, or out of the corporate world and trying to live in that lifestyle. That's really hard to break. I am speaking from experience.
Ooh. I mean, it's a daily thing. It's like, okay, where's your agenda worming its way into this situation? You know, let that go. Let it be as it is. It's not your business. It's not loving. And that requires that ability to not spiritually bypass, to not be codependent, to focus on what's going on inside you. It's not your business what's going on with somebody else. It's not my business. I'm always nosy. I'm into everybody's business. I want to understand why they do what they do, what motivated them, how are they thinking, what are they,
Oh my
like.
God, is that a manifestor thing? Because it drives my husband crazy because I do that. I just start with the questions, and he's like, "You don't need to know all the answers," and I'm like, "I kind of do."
I kind of feel like I crave that, but I think that's the mind ego. Like it's just the mind. The mind has no answers, it only has questions. And when you have kind of an open mind, like you're very, if you look on your chakras and your body graph, if you understand anything about human design and that's open, oh my goodness, the questions, the questions, the questions. But the mind, it does not contain any answers. Answers are embodied in the body, but they do not occur in the mind. So if we're trying to think our way through things, if I just think hard about this long enough and stay up all night losing sleep, then I will come up with the answer and know what to do. And that doesn't work ever. Doesn't work ever.
Mm.
I try really hard not to say I'll think about that. I say I'll get back to you. And then I have to sit with things sometimes and see how they feel. And, you know, maybe it's a no or a yes, depending on how that feels, but in my body. But I think we get wrapped up in thinking, and we get wrapped up in emotionalism and this big word called attachment. Uh, instead of just allowing things to be, you know, power is not controlling other people, it's learning to navigate and control our own vehicle. Like that is powerful, but it's very disempowering and depressing to think that we might that keep having to try to control. Like that is, you're going to be thwarted at every, in every single way, and the universe will make sure you are, so you can learn this art of detachment. uh we it's not our business, it's not our job, it's not our role to control what other people do or think or feel or don't feel or believe or don't believe. Like, and I can say that as I'm saying it now, but working that out on a daily basis is, it takes a lot of like awareness of what am I doing here? What am I doing? What's, why, like I said, that little wormy agenda just kind of gets in there, you know. It's tough. It's really tough, but that's the work. I think that's really how you get to a space of, and that word enlightenment has kind of become very cliche, but you come to this space of total presence and being able to be completely there is when you say to yourself, I don't know and I don't care.
Mm.
I love,
Something to work towards for sure.
yeah.
So, how can we perhaps guide our friends out there going into this challenging holiday season where people are going to be getting together with family members who don't necessarily see eye to eye on many things at many levels?
Mhm.
What's a good way to navigate that? Because now it's not just you and another person, it's you and multiple people.
Let them, let them, let them,
Just sit back and watch the show play out.
let them. And if you know it's going to be a conversation where maybe you don't respect them, maybe that's something you're working on. And maybe you don't want to understand them, then just be, just
Hmm.
be, let them think, believe, say, do whatever they're going to do, and just sit back and watch it as if you're in this detached way, like as if you'd walked into the movie theater and you're watching, a rom-com, right? You're just watching this movie play out, and it's funny, and it's like sometimes it's intense, but you're not really like invested in how it goes. To don't go in with these expectations of it's all going to go perfectly and we'll all just be this wonderful loving family, and we'll all have the warm fuzzies at the end. And don't go in with it's going to be a hellscape and we're going to argue and going to get thrown. Like, drop all that and just go in like, I'm just going to be here. you know I think it's been 2 Thanksgivings ago. um, I was with family, and one person was quite rude, apparently quite rude to me. But I was practicing this, and I didn't pick up on it. I didn't even notice that this person was rude. I didn't even notice it. And my youngest daughter said, "I didn't like the way he spoke to you." And I said, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" I was in this space of I don't know and I don't care. And it was like, I didn't even notice or perceive that anything had happened. She did, you know, because she was invested in my comfort. She was invested in me not being uncomfortable, and she thought that, I must have been really struggling, and I wasn't. I wasn't. Now, I'm not a saint. I can't do this 24/7. But as the holidays come up, I just want to encourage everybody. I don't know and I don't care. Sit back and watch it like you're sitting in a movie theater, and just watch it all unfold. And if there's an opportunity where there is this respect and curiosity, that's a great time to have not an argument, not a debate, but try to try to form some understanding. Or perhaps they will listen to you and there'll be some understanding. But if that's not there, that's okay. It doesn't have to be there. So you just be an observer in the room, and don't be invested in how it goes. Because to some degree you create that if you have an expectation. I find you create more of the negative things. Then there's more power and passion behind that when you go expecting a hellscape and everybody's going to fight. Like, that's exactly what you're going to experience. I hear this person was saying these things to me, and I was just, mhm. Didn't even notice it. And I wish I could do that 24/7. I'm kind of working on it, but I felt really
Wow.
good. I felt good about that because I'd not been able to be around that particular person and not find myself getting triggered by the attacks. But I didn't even perceive the attacks, which was wonderful.
Wow. That is awesome. Very awesome.
We can do it, guys.
Yeah, yeah, I think we can. Well, and what I find helps me is if I'm going into a situation like that, to just intentions are really big and huge and powerful. And like you said, have no expectations going into it as well. And then just allowance.
Mhm. Just let it be, like the song says.
Exactly, exactly. So, are there some human design characters that have a harder time with this than others, and why is that?
All human design characters have a hard time with this when they are in the not self.
Oh,
So if you don't know about human design, I would describe the not self as uh being conditioned by one's own mind. So when you're out of alignment, there's certain things that different types are going to feel. Like, a manifestor is going to get angry. when we're out of alignment. Manifesting generator will feel frustration and anger. A generator will feel frustration. A projector might become bitter. A reflector will be very disappointed. And those emotions are just simply like the lights on your dashboard saying, okay, I'm out of alignment. And if you're feeling that way, it's likely due to some sort of an attachment. But when you're moving according to your strategy and authority, so for me in particular, and for you, if I'm informing people, there's less misunderstanding. If I just inform, like, I'm going to go to the store and I'll be back. You don't have to ask permission, just let people know. There's less projection. Because with a manifester, if you just up and take off, or you're very, what's the word, impulsive, and you do something, the other types don't like that very much. And so there can be this kind of projection, oh, she's mad, or oh, she's thinks this, or oh, and then we get angry because that wasn't what we were, that wasn't our intention, and we've been judged. And so that's for a manifester. For a projector, there could be, they want to be recognized. They want to be invited to share their wisdom. So if a projector feels shut down or not recognized, they might become bitter. Okay, so their strategy is to understand that they need to wait for the invitation. You might, as a projector, have all the wisdom in the world and you really want to share it. And there you are at the Thanksgiving table and you want to tell everybody what you know. But if there's no invitation, it will get shut down and you will become bitter.
Mm.
So, with a generator, they often get frustrated as well. They become impatient because they need to also wait until their authority says that this is correct. So they have to wait to respond. And so they might blurt something out instead of like really feeling into their body. Is it time to respond to this? Is it an or Same thing with the manifesting generator, and with the reflector, they don't have an inner authority, but they might take on everybody's emotions and just, not differentiate or recognize, who they are. And, so when you're in human design teaches you to learn to use your own unique strategy and authority in the decision-making process. That can bring a lot more peace. But when you're not self, when you're being controlled by, the conditioned mind, and you're making decisions based on externalities, outer authorities, like it brings on all of these like emotions that are very unaligned and very uncomfortable. So we really need to tap in, and it's really about hearing and feeling into your own authority, what's correct for you. This is a big problem with our society, is everything's, well, what did she say? And what did he say? And what are they doing? And but my question would be like, what's going on with you? Have you tapped into your own inner wisdom? Um, so that's kind of just a very short explanation of how we use human design to kind of avoid some of these things. But the big thing is like, just stop looking outside of yourself to find peace, satisfaction, success, surprise. Stop looking outside of your own inner resources to have all those things. You have them already inside when you tap into that. And when you can realize that, maybe attaching to what other people do, say, think, believe will be less of a problem. So that's where human design can probably be helpful in that process.
April, you are such a deep well of wisdom. Oh my gosh. I
I
always
you
learn so much when I talk to you. I love it.
I draw from a lot of different sources, and and I'm learning to really just, look within and really make, when you're when you're in situations where you feel really triggered and you feel like you're attaching to this person behaving differently, really maybe practice some inquiry around that. Like, what's going on inside me? Where's the hurt coming from? Because I guarantee you it's probably not so much about that situation in front of you. It's probably, 20 years ago this thing happened, and so really use, when you do become triggered, use that as a time to practice inquiry. And maybe not in the moment because that's hard, but maybe later on you can reflect on that and say, why was I so uncomfortable with Uncle Joe when he brought this up? And what is that about? Like, what's going on inside me?
Beautiful advice. So beautiful. Oh, my dear, thank you so much. Tell people what you have going on and how perhaps they can contact you because I'll tell you what, my family has had human design readings by April, and wow, they are really eye-opening in understanding yourself at a deeper level.
Well, you can go to my website, Observations on the Way. You can go to my Substack and find me. It's probably easier. April Novoa .substack.com is a really good place to find me and contact me. And then my email, which is aloe like the plant dash ha 24 at proton.me if you want to get a hold of me. I do human design readings. I do work with people with their gene keys, which I personally have coined like the most kindest, gentlest shadow work that there is. So, I do a lot of different things, and those are two of my offerings. So yeah, get in touch if you want to work with me, or if you just want to, I have one particular service I call roadside assistance. And generally, that's just like if you know about your human design, but you're having a really hard time trying to use it properly and you're running into roadblocks, it's just a time for us to chat and kind of maybe work out some of the kinks.
Wow, I love that. That is so perfect. Oh, my dear, thank you so much for being here today. I so appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you so much, and I love your platform and what you do and what you bring. And just thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, and thank everybody for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye
Bye.
bye.